Today on Marketing Mavericks, we talk all about the Cannes Festival of Creativity. It's the biggest event in advertising and marketing, and Edelman Digital, and they're bringing home a lion for their work with Chipotle. Coming up next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Marketing Mavericks is provided by Cashfly at CACHEFLY.com.
Welcome to Marketing Mavericks, where we talk about everything from marketing to technology. We're at the intersection of everything that's happening on the web, as well as what's happening in and across the globe. Okay, so this week, it's all about what happened at the biggest event for advertising and creativity. We're going to talk about the Cannes Festival of Creativity. In fact, I think the debate is whether it's Cannes or Cannes. So we had this debate for the pre-show, so if you don't join us before the pre-show, you missed out on that. We have great guests joining us. Our co-host today is Brian Reich, who is the managing director of Little M Media. And then we also have Glenn Engler, who is the director of global chief of staff at Edelman PR. Welcome, Glenn.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And you're just fresh from coming from the event. Very exciting stuff. We were talking about, I was certainly saying how jealous I am that you got to attend the event and I did not. Going to live vicariously through you for the show. What was your, when did you get back?
I got back Friday afternoon.
Friday afternoon.
I was there about a week.
A week in France. That's
true.
It's unfortunate.
That's rough.
It's rough. And Brian, we've been talking a lot about this event and everything that happened. And thanks for co-hosting the show again today.
Absolutely. For the record, I believe it should be referred to as Cannes. So throughout our conversation today, I will be referring to it as Cannes. You guys can talk about it as Cannes. It's all good.
Well, that was the debate. I asked you guys. It was divided. I needed the chat room to probably help me out and figure out like what we should decide to call it. But it is the biggest event. We won't argue about that. It happens in advertising and creativity, and a lot happened. A lot of awards were given. Edelman certainly was an award winner, right, Glenn?
That is correct. Thank you. We won a Grand Prix on Monday evening. It's very exciting.
Very exciting stuff. How many of your people attended approximately this event?
We had about 20 this year from around the globe. We had folks from our Asian offices. We had someone from Sydney, from India. In our Mumbai office, we had folks from Paris, from London, and several of the offices in the United States.
Nice. How many employees do you have kind of in general at your PR company, your little PR boutique?
Our little PR boutique. We have 5,000 employees globally in 67 offices and 32 countries. Wow.
Is your focus on strictly public relations? I know yours is, but in fact, let's just talk about your role specifically. What is your scope of responsibility at Edelman?
So I joined about 6 months ago in a new position, which is the global head of corporate strategy. And we overall, as Edelman, just I think to your question, we obviously grew up in PR. Dan Edelman founded the firm in 1952. We continue to be independent. Which is very appealing. We like it. As I said, we're about 5,000 employees, and we grew up in PR, classic media relations, marketing PR. About 9 years ago, we built out what is now by far and away the largest digital practice of any of the communications and PR firms. We have over 1,000 people globally, heavy duty, social media research, and then everything you would think about with PR and communications, from crisis to the marketing promotions of brands and products, to everything that goes on with corporate reputation and media relations as well. So we really cover the gamut of a much broader communications category than I think some people think about with classic PR.
So, okay, obviously this event was important to your company and important to Edelman, and we love following what you guys are doing. What has changed about public relations and Edelman's work that is now in consideration for Cannes or Cannes?
I'm going to go with Cannes as well, even though I hear my French professor from long ago correct me nonstop. But I'm with Brian that it's Cannes.
Okay.
Thank you.
But anyway, I think what's happened a lot over certainly the last 3 to 5 years is the concept of creativity has changed pretty dramatically. And the concept that it used to be run on the 30-second CV spots, and it was the ad agencies, and that's really what went on. 10 years ago, the digital agencies and media agencies started getting there. And then, at least from our perspective, and I can't speak for some of the other classic PR firms, but our social at the core and research and creativity has really come to life. We run about 700 communities, social communities for our clients around the globe, touches about 250 million people every single day with the types of content. And that's really changed how consumers and corporate customers are engaging with brands. And so I think the definition, if you look at the winners this year across all of the categories, it's blurring left and right, from the experiential work that the Volvo did to show the Volvo trucks, to certainly our work in partnership with CAA on the Chipotle work, which was, quote, PR category, but was social and experiential and media relations and film production and music all in one.
So, Glenn, you mentioned that you partnered on this with CAA as well as a movie production company, et cetera. The role I understand that Edelman played, based on a post that Richard Edelman wrote about, was, what seemed to me to be fairly traditional PR. A lot of big press, a lot of driving downloads of the game and views of the Scarecrow film on YouTube. How would you describe how Edelman fit in and sort of what the PR component or the PR category was looking for with a win like this? What is it that you guys brought to the table that was so interesting that you wouldn't see outside the PR category, I guess?
So a lot of things in your question on this specific one that I think is interesting. First of all, I would say with just about every single one of our clients, certainly all of our major ones, there are other agencies all over the place. And our charter is working on behalf of the client, partnering. And I think that's really important for every one of our clients, whether it's, Unilever or Starbucks or Novartis or Chevron. Every single client, there are other agencies that are there. And, I think there was we had many clients at Cannes who talked about that they believe more and more it's about collaboration and partnership with their roster of agencies. And that, while there are areas of expertise, they expect agencies to work really closely together. Keith Weed, the CMO of Unilever, gave a great presentation at one of the keynotes, and he had 12 agencies that were up there, and we're very proudly one of their roster agencies. And I think more and more, with our clients being CMOs and corporate communications officers, they are expecting their agencies to work on behalf of them more than ever before, and to come together on key initiatives. So that's sort of point number one. I don't think anybody at Edelman would ever say that we were the sole player of any of our pieces of work with any client anywhere. I think agencies would be remiss, and I'd argue short-lived in this world. So that's number one. Number two, specifically for Chipotle, it was a brilliant idea to attack, again, from multiple agencies and a whole bunch of really smart clients, to attack the conversation around food and what's going into food and how food is put together. And that was really the brief, which is, let's have a different conversation than a scientific one only or a big ad campaign. And so in this particular case, there was a variety of different angles to bring this story to life. It was classic storytelling. It was launched without any paid media for the first 4 weeks. And I won't go through all the numbers, but you can go through it. But it was pretty impressive in terms of 600 million media impressions and 12 million YouTube views and downloads of the game 650,000 downloads, and just, again, you can read all the background. Our role was to partner to bring that to life, which also included music. It was the great Willy Wonka. We talked about music earlier on, as I think I dated myself in some of the pre-area. But, it was the Willy Wonka, I think it was 1971 theme song. Fiona Apple sang it. And our role in partnership with the client and CAA and others was to get the music downloaded and distributed and obviously embedded in the game. And so we worked alongside. And I think what's great about this example is it was probably pretty hard for folks outside of those rooms to see exactly what one agency partner did versus the other. I think if Richard Edelman were here, he would say that's how we define success, is we together did just a really great piece of work and brought it to life. And we absolutely owned a lot of the quote unquote core PR areas, but I certainly in this case, and while I didn't personally work on it, I think we see across the board that let's go attack these things and flex muscles where it makes sense to flex the muscles. But here was a great set of stories that we wanted to bring to life in a variety of different ways across film, music, earned media, social media, digital content, mobile gaming, and all of the aspects of owned and earned and paid properties.
You mentioned something about starting off without really promoting it. You went to traditional internet media, you put it on YouTube. I mean, what was the strategy? Like, how did you decide, okay, this is how we're going to launch this piece of art, really, which is what it is. I mean, I think advertising can be, right? And you create this ad and you put it out there. How do you decide where you're going to launch first and how you're going to kind of let it kind of play out through the different mediums?
So, I can't speak specifically to that one because I was not personally in that room. And interestingly, the Chipotle client, as I think many of the clients there, everybody's really proud of all the awards and everything, but they actually like to just move on and drive the business. And I think we can come back to that about Cannes and the good and the bad and the ugly of it. In this particular case, everybody's obviously thrilled and the agencies are thrilled, but we've sort of, we smile and we move on. I think so that particular case, and I think the case with all of our clients, there's a question of, hey, we got a great story that we want to tell, and not a big blast and use. We can't outspend other competitors that are going to spend tens or $100 millions for a big ad spot. And so I think this one was how do we go to where conversations are being held? How do we seed that with content? How do we share it in a bunch of different ways? How do we get people to engage and pass it along? And there was a lot of media outreach. But again, the first 4 weeks, there was not big paid media. It was, let's use YouTube. It's the perfect platform. Wonderful partnership with Google. A lot of players that decided that was the best way to get the story, shared, touched, felt, engaged in a variety of fashion. I think that's sort of our charter as being part of the client agency team, to case by case basis, what else is going on? What's the best way of getting people to see, engage, share story? What experts need to be there, from food bloggers to scientists to farmers, to cultural icons to folks that are reaching a variety of different audiences, and what a mobile game would be. And I think that's the puzzle that we try to piece together along with our other agency partners on behalf of the client and with the clients.
So let's talk about this Scarecrow campaign. I'm sorry, Brian, did you want to jump in?
Well, no, a quick follow-up, Glenn, which is, when you look at something like the success of Scarecrow, which we'll get into more depth in a minute, how much of it is dependent on the vision or the willingness of the client? You guys are the largest PR agency in the world. You have tons and tons of clients. Full disclosure, I spent a year at Edelman a few years ago, so I know how diverse the roster of clients are. But there are probably a lot of things that you pitch to clients that are not Chipotle in terms of how to collaborate and partner, or how to grow a social following. And those clients don't bite. They don't have the appetite for that. So how much of something like this does come down to, the client being willing to take those risks?
Look, I think the best work I've been involved in over my career here and elsewhere, it's always with a strong client partnership, because the client, ultimately, they're the ones that are sitting there every single day with their management team externally and have to deal with it. And there's been brilliant ideas pitched by lots of agencies, including ours, over the years that don't resonate for a variety of reasons. And, maybe it wasn't the right time, or maybe it wasn't teed up correctly, or maybe there wasn't the right budget, or maybe there were other issues, a whole host of reasons. But I have long subscribed, and I would like to think that Edelman growing to as big as we are with a client roster, that one of the reasons I joined is not only the independence and the family feel, even though we're as big as we are, but the client roster's to die for. I happen to be a huge Starbucks fanatic, and some believe that that's why I joined Edelman. That's not the only reason, but that was nice. But it's because, clients have to drive their business. And I think when agencies are aligned at driving the business at the right moment on behalf of the clients, that aren't just this wonderful idea off on the side, then, it's up to us to figure out the right moment to partner with the client. So again, I was not here when this was launched. I want to be clear about that. But from what I have personally observed and seen, all good stuff has to have good client passion and endorsement. Otherwise, it's a nice idea that's not going to live on. And this is courageous for folks like Chipotle to attack this space in the way that they've done, to give a good enough brief that allows the, you guys know what making great stuff is about. There's some ugly moments when you're creating the idea along the way, and it's sort of up to what's that magic and how do you hold hands and have the courage to do it. And you got to have the right client to do that. Absolutely 100%. It's got to be client-led. They're the ones that will allow you to, push ideas from wild to wild and go figure out how to get funding and stand behind it. So I am, even though I was not personally involved in this one, it's probably safe to say that our best stuff all around the world that we've done with some of our best clients have to have a good client partnership for the sustainable stuff. Otherwise, it's, short-lived, bang your head against the wall. And, it's the service. We're in the service business. You kind of need clients that are going to take those risks and champion the work.
Right. Well, so let's talk about the event and maybe the award itself, because you did attend the event and you did receive an award. And, Brian and I have often talked about, and I think this discussion happens across, all types of media, that what is the relevancy of awards? So whether it's the Grammys or Oscars, and this is kind of the Oscars, right, for creative and PR. What's the relevance of actually winning a Lion?
So I think, look, it was great, and the adrenaline rush of sitting in that auditorium and seeing, your CEO go up on stage with a couple of other folks, NCAA, and accept the Grand Prix award was just incredibly cool. And the buzz afterwards, I think it comes down to a couple things. There you got it on the screen. I mean, this is pretty cool. Look, it helps clients. I'll come back to clients. Let me start with clients. I think ultimately clients care. There is a little bit of the sex appeal, if I can use that word on this, highly protected show. There's the sex appeal of getting this Grand Prix. I think you could say Grand Prix, even though it's Cannes or Cannes. But anyway, of getting this Grand Prix, rewarding the work. I think everybody likes that. There's a little bit of the excitement around it. I think I have seen over the years clients, whether it's stuff in some of the big, ad awards or at South by Southwest or at CES, there's a little bit of, I better not be too excited about it, because there's, if business is going great, that's great. If sales are plummeting and you win an award, you tend to get beaten up by the CEO a little bit. So CMOs and CCOs have to put it in context. That said, it is recognition, especially on this global stage, that what you've done is broken through, and that's neat. I think for the agency, I can tell you the chatter that we got, and for our employees, it is always nice to get recognized on the stage. It means a lot. People were excited about it. It means a lot for, attracting talent. We're a talent business. We're not making, sheetrock screws for a hardware store or a big, chain. We're making ideas and trying to drive our clients' business. And to have that level of recognition externally is important. And for creatives, the best creatives in the world want to build their book, and nothing has a stamp of approval on the global stage than having something like the the Cannes Lion, and the Grand Prix is great. So it's nice. I think, it's obviously rewarding. It was fun to celebrate. I was personally impressed by the class of the other agencies that reached out congratulatory. I think there's a good camaraderie there, which was really neat. Some of my former colleagues reaching out saying that's so cool. I think, 95% positive is fantastic. And that's part of what this is all about for our, vis-a-vis the other competitors. There's something going on with the agencies that win award after award after award after award. It's worth looking at. And I think that's worth it. I think our clients ultimately like it. All that being said, I think agencies can get lost if you're solely focused on the awards and not on ultimately helping your auto clients move vehicles, helping your hotel clients get folks with their heads in beds, the credit card companies sell credit cards, the Samsung Mobile selling mobile device, like stuff like that. If we ever lose focus on that, we will not be in a good place. And I think that's something that Richard has set from the top, and we as a leadership team try to just stay maniacally focused on the clients and the clients' results. And we can have a little fun and celebrate the award, which is great.
So quick follow-up on that, and I think it may sort of be a nice transition to what we're going to talk about in the second half of the show in terms of what did perform at Cannes, what we can learn from that, et cetera. I think it is easy, right, for an agency to pat itself on the back and celebrate success in awards or be celebrated for awards, and then very quickly find itself flat-footed in terms of staying cutting edge and innovative in its thinking about the future. Edelman and Richard Edelman in particular is very much future focused. But how do you translate the success that you had or the lessons that you learned from something like this Chipotle account to the rest of the agency? How do you future-proof, if you will, against becoming so caught up in the award culture and actually continue to be the one that sets the standard? What is sort of the operational thought process there to use Cannes as a springboard instead of the end of the cycle of success for this particular approach to work?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Look, we tried to do. It's nice. It was fun, and I can tell you that the next day, Richard flew to Berlin to spend time with the World Economic Forum CEOs and Angela Merkel in Berlin, and is the most maniacally focused on clients as any person, with the possible exception of his friend and my former mentor, David Kenny, from former Digitas, now Weather Company. They're just maniacally focused on clients. And I think it's a tone he sets at the top, and he sets all the way through. Never take your eye off the clients. If it comes about you, if it becomes focused on you or the firm or your own little team, you will lose relevance. And so I think as a result, our goal is to make our clients successful and drive their business. And if we make them famous along the way and they win some awards, that's great. But I'd rather not win an award and have Samsung Mobile be the most successful mobile device in the world than that's awards in and of itself, and we'll win awards along the way. And I think that's subtle but really important. I think we push that down, to our entire organization and try to remain focused. And yes, we'll have fun. And it's nice validation. But I think that is a truism of this place and the passion that, Richard's father started with back 60-something years ago that's been really, really important. Richard did a masterclass at Cannes. The room was absolutely and utterly packed. And it was the Young Lions masterclass. And he talked about leading that you can't lead as a CEO from behind a desk. And there were just great questions and back and forth. But he started out by saying, spend time with clients. If you get inwardly focused, looking at the numbers, you will be left behind. And I think that level of client focus and a bit of paranoia and intellectual curiosity, we spent a lot of time as a team there at Cannes looking at what won, and more importantly, looking at all the other people that were there. Who are the partners? We spent time in the, Google Beach. Who was there? What were people doing? What are the new products and devices? And what's not just getting buzz, but, what are some of the themes? And, we huddled the next day and looked at how do we keep getting better? And that was really rewarding for me to have, yes, we celebrated and that was great. But the next day we got together and huddled and said, what are we going to learn? What are we going to do next? What are we going to do better? So that the path to next year is, Cannes is one of many. South by Southwest is a big place for us in our Edelman digital brand, and CES is hugely important to our clients. And I think we try to take the learnings, learn from them, but also not overreact to it, because as with any awards show, they can sometimes be, subjective's the wrong word, but there's a lot of things that go into the awards, and it's one of many inputs that we try to take as a leadership team on behalf of our clients.
So that note, I'm actually going to invite our next guest to join us, David Griner, who is the social editor at Adweek. Welcome, David, to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Also returning from the much debated Cannes versus Cannes festival, right?
I am. I just got in late last night, so apologies for the coffee.
I think it's not Starbucks. What?
No, but I have to admit, returning home to American coffee was one of the weird things you don't notice that you'd miss. I missed it.
Really? So thanks for joining. You wrote a lot about this event, and certainly you were there. You experienced it. What was your role? Why did you decide to attend the festival?
This was my first Cannes. We send a team every year, and we always kind of look at it going in about what we think is going to be the bigger stories and the more interesting stuff to cover. This time, I definitely was looking forward to being a part of it because I run the social channels for Adweek, but I also contribute quite a bit. I co-edit the blog, AdFreak, our creativity blog, and we kind of knew that those would be big channels for telling everybody what's happening in real time and trying to get content up as fast as it was being delivered to us. So that was kind of my role, was to pay attention to as much as we could, as fast as we could, and get it out there instead of just coming back and writing for the print magazine. And so we cranked out, I think, over something like over 35 or 40 articles in just a few days, while attending dozens of interviews one-on-one with some of the top agency executives, and attending as many sessions as we could in the awards and the press conferences. So it was a busy week, but it was a lot of fun.
So I have to go back to this before I forget. So, Glenn, you said something about Google Beach. What was that? That sounds like a lot of fun.
So in typical fashion, and I'm a big Google fanatic, they were brilliant. So they, like many, had some brands would set up a booth. Google had a playground, not surprisingly. It was down on the beach. They had all of the products and services that you could play with, and Google Glass and all the devices. And then they hosted not only clients and partners, but it was also a place where there was free Wi-Fi and you could chill and relax. And it was packed all the time, and not a huge surprise because of what they do. And they focused, yes, they had some speakers throughout the way, but most of it was come to us, which Google does really well. So yeah, it was impressive.
So, David, we talked about this before you joined, but this idea of events and how relevant they are. So you have, Oscars and the Grammys and sporting awards events, but yet, and from the standpoint of media, there's South by Southwest and other, whether it's, all year long, there's events, right? And some are announcements and some are parties, right? And this is considered kind of an awards party. How much of this event, David, from your perspective as media, is party, and how much is really learning? I mean, is this a relevant event?
That I was one of the most skeptical going in, because I've not been before. I'm not easily kind of dazzled by the parties and the spectacle of it. I was really curious to see what were agencies and marketers getting out of it. And I was really impressed. Several people I talked to said in the last few years, more and more companies are going, not just agencies. And so several people said this is just a great place to meet great potential clients or to network better with existing clients. I think the best comment I heard was from Cutwater, which is a great agency. They invented pretty much viral video in the very early days, or at least played a big role in that. And I asked them, what do you have in consideration this year? And they said nothing. Zero. They didn't submit anything for a Lion. They were just there to meet potential clients, because they said, we like winning Lions. We want to meet more potential clients who like winning Lions, and that's the best place to do it.
And David, it's Brian. As a follow-up on that, I saw a couple articles about how Cannes has transitioned over the past few years. One, to include more digital, and in the future they're talking about even having a category focused on data. Two, to what you were just talking about in terms of everybody being about celebrating past work, to now probably half and half, maybe biz dev compared to just sort of self-congratulatory efforts. What do you see, since you were there on the ground, as sort of the trajectory for Cannes? Are we going to see more, digital? Are we going to see more, wearables and sort of hardcore tech? Like, what is next year's Cannes presumably going to look like if you go back?
Well, the thing that stuck out to us, the whole editorial team that was there this year, was they keep adding these categories that really reward integration, using multiple things, not just making one ad. I guess the downside of that is that you see the same ad popping up over and over and over again because marketers are learning to kind of game these categories. So I think the intention is good, that they're trying to diversify what Cannes is about. They're trying to bring in more. There's an innovation category which had a completely different set of winners. It was judged by VC, venture capital people. So very different set of winners. That one was nice and refreshing because everything else was, definitely no offense to Edelman, but it was Scarecrow in every category, and it was Harvey Nichols in every category. That's not to say that they didn't deserve it, but it's to say that marketers are learning you can't just make an ad, that you've got to have a great PR plan. You've got to have this, and especially if you want lions, you've got to you got to have this full court press of just going in with everything. So to answer your question, I think we'll see a few more categories that reward some of those niches. I think innovation, this is only the second year of that lion, and I think they deserve some credit for really rewarding different work. But I'm hoping personally that they don't go too far into these categories that just keep stacking Grand Prix on top of these same winners over and over.
So, okay, the chat room's blowing up about Chipotle, by the way. In fact, they mentioned that on the Today Show, they're talking about Chipotle. So, Edelman, good job on that. I mean, I think POTUS, they said, was actually at Chipotle. So, it's a big topic of conversation. I have to tell you, when Arby's was on the show, we had Arby's brought in here. I mean, I know you're not Chipotle, but we got to fix that, right, Brian?
I think there's no reason we couldn't organize our topics around your eating preferences, Tonya. Absolutely.
What? Okay. So, back to the show. There, a little slip away, little moment. So this is a great place to hear stories, and you talked about making connections, David, and building client relationships, and certainly some of the most prominent CMOs, heads of marketing, whether it's public relations or on the brand side or how many real business relationships do you think come from this event? I'll start with you, actually, Glenn.
Hi. Look, it is, I completely agree with David from the community building and networking standpoint. We had many of our clients there, and, nothing's a better reminder that as one of my former CMOs used to tell me, clients are human too. There's just outside of the context of the client environment, nothing is better than connecting on a human standpoint. And it was absolutely fantastic. We had great discussions. You learn so much, not only about the individuals, but about what they're attacking, what they're looking at, challenges, the politics internally, and how you can help. And candidly, and honestly, if I didn't go to one session and we didn't win one award and we didn't have one new business opportunity or interview one person, it was worth its weight in gold from my standpoint, just to be there with our clients. On top of it, however, the partnership opportunities, the new and emerging partners, the steady partners that are there, new business, absolutely, there are people that are interested in connecting because they're there. And talent from that standpoint. It's again a little bit similar to what we found in Austin at South by Southwest. The sessions are less and less important to us, while there are good things that are there. But working with clients, with potential partners, with prospects and talent, there were a lot of people, and I'm sure it's a case for other agencies, that were saying, hey, you guys have job openings. That's pretty cool. I like the idea of coming to a big, independent, growing organization. So we actually found it was an unbelievable recruiting opportunity for us as well.
So I know this is a passion point for you, Brian, but and we actually reached out to Bono to come on the show, but in lieu of him being here, maybe you can speak to this. I mean, he actually had a call to action that he thought brands needed to be more socially responsible. Glenn, how does that approach the social aspect or being more socially responsible? How much of an impact is that with your clients? I mean, is that something that you talk to them about, or did they come to you about that?
Yeah, so it's a passion point for Edelman. It's something that's near and dear to Richard. Every year for the last 14 years, we've done the Edelman Trust Barometer, which is the largest research project of research study of trust in governments, trust in brands, trust in media in the world. It's 33,000 people globally in 27 countries. And interestingly, as you can probably imagine, trust in government has never been at a lower point than it was in 2013. And the gap between companies and governments, that gap in trust is larger than ever before, more so because of the plummet in trust in governments. But one of the things we saw is 87%, I think that's the number, 87% of respondents believe that companies can both do well and do good. And it's a really important part of, corporate social responsibility used to be off on the side as a little philanthropic side. And it's a really important part of what we're doing with our clients, from Paul Pullman, the CEO of Unilever, and what Unilever is doing to really attack the footprint of water usage and other aspects, to how Starbucks approaches and our work really with across the board different types of clients. That's a really important part of our corporate relationship, which I think used to be 5-10 years ago used to be separate, and it is completely integrated into the marketing campaigns and communications initiatives. They're all inextricably linked. So we believe that's hugely important, and given the social footprint and how people are having conversations, more so than ever before, if it's not part of what you're doing, it's a short-lived effort.
So just to pick up on that, and then David, I have a question for you. The Chipotle campaign came under some criticism, I think some humorous criticism, maybe some valid criticism, about whether or not the marketing campaign itself was sort of addressing the substantive issues of safer, healthier local food sourcing and all of that. And one of the big criticisms overall of these brand-driven or marketing-driven corporate social responsibility efforts or cause marketing-related efforts is that they end up being much more for marketing's sake. The call, I think, and David, here's where the question comes in eventually for you. The call that I think Bono was making was to go even further than that and actually look at not just marketing partnerships, but everything from product development to, core ways of thinking and operating and investing in places where there was an urgent economic need or a humanitarian need in the case of the AIDS crisis, that some of these companies were uniquely capable of solving. David, the question I have for you, since you come at this from the outside, and then Glenn, by all means, I'm not trying to throw you or Edelman under the bus in this, so weigh in afterwards, is of all of the do-gooder corporate social responsibility efforts that you saw integrated into these campaigns and the calls for what Glenn was absolutely right about, which is that it needs to be part of the core business, how much of what you saw and what you wrote up do you think was just do-gooder marketing and not necessarily companies that really embrace and understand, that we're living in a different world and that customers expect, a different set of outcomes and a different way of operating? How much of this is just sort of posturing because good is hot right now, as opposed to a real reflection of an evolution in the business world and the way people engage customers?
Well, you bring up a really interesting point, and this was kind of the hottest debate at the end of the week, is that we spend this whole week, and every single person I talked to, and every speaker, and every presenter was talking about how advertising and marketing can change the world because we have the resources and we have the money. And as you mentioned, you've got Bono talking about how much we could accomplish if we all work together, and everyone's agreeing and cheering and happy. And then the final awards come down, and we've talked a lot about Chipotle and Scarecrow, which did extremely well, but I would argue that they're really one of the only kind of beneficial kind of ads that did well. The top winner was a retailer called Harvey Nichols over in Britain. And their campaign was about selfishness. It was, sorry, I spent it on myself, is what it's called. And it's about giving people really lousy presents at Christmas so that you can spend more money on yourself. And I was shocked when I attended they revealed these winners to the press first, and they let us talk to the jury. And I said, what's going on? You guys, it's like we've talked so much about inspirational advertising and advertising that can change the world and make it a better place. And then we give 4 Grand Prix, the most awards, the most awarded campaign of the entire year at Cannes, went to this entire ad campaign about selfishness. And so that really, to me, and to a lot of the attendees, highlighted maybe there is pushback among the judges because honestly, it was not great. The Harvey Nichols ad, I've taken a position that it is not by far the best ad of the year. It didn't deserve to win as much as it did. But I wonder, and several others have wondered now, if there was pushback against this idea that marketing always has to do good. Because Lord knows there were campaigns at Cannes that helped get 1,000 sexual predators arrested by creating a fictional child that they would get entrapped by, and just all these other really cool, innovative ways to change the world. And then the most awarded campaign is this, sorry, I spent it on myself. And so there was some frustration with that, but I think to your point, there was also speculation that maybe the judges or maybe the industry itself is quietly, although they won't say it in public, quietly pushing back against the Chipotles and against some of these kind of more altruistic ad campaigns.
Well, and you see that. What was it? Was it Chrysler? I'm trying to remember now. I was trying to Google it really quick. That and then Ford played off of their car ad that said, this is our environmental approach. This is why you should buy Ford, right? Does anybody remember that advertisement, Brian?
Yeah. No. I think David, I was just going to post. I was looking up the link to your piece about the 7 ads that were more interesting. Personally, and a lot of my work has focused on sort of challenging the role that marketing and advertising can have in changing behavior and actually doing good. And I think the idea of doing good has potentially been co-opted in an interesting way. One of the things that Glenn, you mentioned, which I think was spot on, and I wonder if you can maybe connect the dots a little bit better here. And maybe it's because you come from a PR perspective on this, is at the end of the day, there is a business goal that needs to be met. And just the same as a business goal, more heads in beds was one of the examples that you provided. You could make you could make a behavior change goal. You could make a goal that is in fact related to doing good and not just getting attention or obviously winning awards or being creative and things like that. So it seems to me that yes, the criticism gets lumped onto Cannes and the people who take advantage of Cannes to celebrate certain creativity, but the responsibility may lie more with the clients in this case, where if you take Bono as the client, his goal is to end AIDS. And so if he brings in partners and creative folks, that's what you're going to be measured against. If you have a hotel company or a credit card company or a coffee company, their goal is to sell more coffee or to get more people to stay at their hotel or to get more transactions rung up. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it shouldn't be mistaken for something that has a social good component sort of underlying to it. Am I confusing the two in a bad way, Glenn, do you think? Or, does David's criticism have, resonance, if you will, inside your world?
Yeah, look, I think you guys are spot on. I think it's a tricky sandbox that we're playing in, and creativity is such a moving target's the wrong word, but there's creative in so many ways that I saw running around at Cannes and other places. It's having worked in the automotive industry for a number of years. The Volvo truck ad of Jean-Claude Van Damme doing a split was hugely creative. To me, what was immensely creative of the series, I think there were 12 vignettes, was they did what every single automotive marketer wants to do, is to talk about the different forms and function of their particular vehicle and bring it to life. And the number of times that I've been involved where we've done, turning radius, and for them to come up with the idea of having I think it was, the gerbil wheel with a carrot to show the turning rate, was just really creative and clever. What was similarly creative and clever, and David, if you saw one of those, was the ability to get, I can't actually even remember the not-for-profit, but it was a billboard with a credit card swipe that allowed you to give immediate donations to end hunger. And it would literally be like a loaf of bread. You'd swipe the credit card, the bread would fall off, and you'd immediately do a donation on your credit card to this charity. It was a simple transaction, immediately overcame a hurdle, which is how do I get someone to donate at the point of sale, if you will, unbelievably creatively using a unit that people tend to just plaster a sign against. That one, I can't remember what award, but unbelievably brilliant. It won a gold or a bronze or something. Did that drive 70 million views or 100 million views like a Volvo truck? No. But I would argue that that was unbelievably breathtakingly creative and simple. I think to your other point about good and how to integrate them, I think Project Sunlight, which is something that we worked closely with Ogilvy, Unilever, again, Keith Weed, CMO, and Paul Pullman, the CEO, is a client we've worked with for many years. And there's a variety of different ways. They ultimately have to sell products, and they are, fiercely battling all around the world. And Project Sunlight was one of their first big corporate initiatives to change the way that expectant parents think about the world for their, soon to join the world children. And it was incredibly moving. It was launched in, I believe, 6 countries around the world. It was work we did with Unilever and with Ogilvy. Very social in nature, of people I'm going to commit to take shorter showers and things like that. And I would argue that this is something Richard Edelman's been hugely behind. That was something that starts at the top with the CEO, where he said, we are going to continue to grow, and we're going to double in size, and we're not going to change the basic footprint, because we're going to go and change our entire supply chain. And that's something that has to happen at the CEO level. And we're fortunate to work with folks like Paul Pullman at Unilever and Howard Schultz at Starbucks, and Indra Nouri at Pepsi, who have worked overall. That doesn't mean that every piece of communications that Starbucks is going to do are going to be all about, changing the way that coffee is grown in different parts of the world. But it does mean, I think he's really been an icon. And I know there's battlers about Starbucks and, all over the place. But overall, for me, as a member of a leadership team at our agency, we love to associate ourselves with companies like that have a vision and a belief overall that what they're going to do is to, yes, be successful and expand, but also have an impact. I don't think that means every TV spot, every initiative, everywhere is always going to have that stitched through, but it does need to hang together. And I think some of those brands like Unilever, like Starbucks, like GE, again, some of the ones we've been fortunate to work with, I think feel pretty strongly about that. I would argue that starts at the CEO level, not the CMO or CCO. They have to be connected together.
You talked about, TV advertising, and I think the ultimate goal, and we've talked about social responsibility and creativity, and all of these things are important. Your ultimate goal is to, get some support, or really, get people to purchase or get somebody behind whatever it is that you're trying to promote, whether it's buy a product or engage in a service or get behind some sort of cause. The idea around paid, owned, and earned media, I mean, as an agency, you have to think about all of those different channels. And technology is at the forefront of certainly earned media and how you get people to engage with you. How big of a part of the conversation are you making that towards going forward? Like, what was the takeaway even from Con on kind of that aspect of the technology play into whether it's any of those, but specifically earned media? Glenn?
I just want to go back to one of the things that David said, because I think it is completely spot on. It was really hard to pull apart a particular category and have it be exclusive from others. And I think that's good. And I think that is, and I know from our folks that are, have been more closely connected with the Cannes juries and the executive organization, they're taking a hard look at their categories, because there are a lot of things that they could be, is that digital? Is that experiential? Is that mobile? Is that social? The answer is yes. And I think, David, you're spot on. There was a lot of stuff that, at least from an agency, it's like, well, where does this fit? I don't know. It seems to fit in like 6 or 7. And so I think things like data and technology and social, there was not one good story that didn't have social platforms and data and technology embedded in it, and targeting and paid media and owned media. And I think that's sort of the nature of the giant sandbox we're all playing in, which to us as creative marketers is a good thing. I think that's going to be a challenge for the Cannes of the world to figure out, do they relook at these categories? Is there a different lens? I completely agree with innovation as a category that was truly differentiated. It's hard to figure that out, because there's, they're not just, this is the best TV spot and this was the best website. So to your specific question, we look at owned media and earned media. Those are inextricably linked. The particular example, and we had several of our client work shortlisted. They all ran the gamut. They were all with other partners. They all touched those areas, and I think that's a good thing overall, even if it probably makes the judging a little bit tricky.
Brian?
Well, yeah. So I guess the other question I had is, you were mentioning innovation, and David, maybe why don't you start on this one? And data. Twit is a tech network, obviously. So was there a lot of conversation about actual physical technology, wearable technology, or things like that, things where the actual coding and physical presence of the technology and the interaction with that was what drove sort of the innovation or the marketing conversation, and not just the data or the content or the output of that or the sale of that technology?
I think that the struggle has been to find a way to do that, but still have it qualify as advertising and not just as a gadget. So you've got the Innovation Awards, which honored these really brilliant ideas that were very tech-centric to the point of just being technology. Many of them were even what the judges called raw ideas that hadn't even proven themselves out yet, but had a lot of potential. But then you've got things like Nivea won a gold, and I'm sorry, off the top of my head, I can't remember if it got a Grand Prix. I believe it might have, for creating a wristband that came as part of an ad that would help you keep track of your kids at the beach. So that was kind of a perfect tie-in of its advertising, but it's also technology, it's wearables, and it's doing good. That one was kind of seen as like that perfect coalescence of all those different ideas. And there weren't many like that, because I think the gadgets themselves tend to sometimes fall into just being a gadget, and it becomes just about the technology. And that's something that Bono was really struggling with too, and as finding a way to not just have products that you can buy that help Red and that are part of a good marketing campaign, but to really combine the marketing with this message that's very powerful and that's going to make people improve lives and make things better.
So, we're finally kind of a follow-up here at the end of the event, and you both are back, and you both have, clearly have a lot that you could probably share with the rest of your team. But what's your biggest takeaway? And what's next, Glenn? What are you going to do with all that you gathered from Cannes?
Definitely worthwhile. We'll be back again. We learned a lot. We took a lot away. Had fantastic client connections. I think it pushed us in certain areas to go bigger and bolder with some clients, and I think it validated some directions that we're heading in, and hugely worthwhile for us, and we took away a lot from it.
Well, I really appreciate you joining, and I appreciate both of you joining the show, both Glenn and David. In fact, Glenn, if somebody wants to follow you or connect with you and hear more about all the great work that you're doing at Edelman, what's the best way they can do that?
Just connect with me on Twitter at Glenn Engler, GLENNENGLER.
And David, if somebody wants to follow your work and what you're writing about, how can they do that?
I am easy to find. I'm at Griner, Griner on Twitter, and of course follow at Adweek on Twitter and at AdFreak, our creative blog, which everyone seems to love. So you follow the good work there.
Well, thank you guys. Really appreciate it, and we'll catch up with you later.
Thanks so much.
for having me.
Absolutely. Now, Brian, I think that I was really getting into, unfortunately, the show is only an hour, but I was really getting into this conversation about wearables and how invasive that can be. And we'll have to have these guys back to talk more about that in the future. I mean, what do you think? I mean, I think that's a slippery slope that you can get into when it comes to advertising and, inserting advertising into technology and how people feel about that. Well, we see it. I mean, obviously with all the platforms. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a lot of sort of artificial separation made between the product and the selling of the product, the marketing of the product. If you are, wearing something, it says something about you. It sends a message. In a lot of cases, the brands benefit from, whatever you're wearing. There's also the opportunity for the brands or the product makers to learn from that. So, more than anything, I think we have to abandon these kind of artificial distinctions between the products and the marketing itself and start to say, okay, can we build better products, which is obviously a conversation that's been happening for a long time and advancing, I think, pretty well. Can we use the data that gets collected from a wearable, whether it's something like a Fitbit that I wear that tracks my steps and my sleep and things like that? Can we take intelligence from the data that's collected there to improve the product, but also potentially improve the marketing, knowing when to reach me or when not to reach me? So, I think there's a slippery slope in some regards because you can start to conflate or inflate the idea that the product is cooler than it is, or try to make it into a trend or something for marketing purposes. But I think there is a lot of really good, interesting stuff that the technology world understands about how to influence behavior that the marketing world could learn from. And I think there's a lot that the marketing world understands and that you saw on display at Cannes about how to make products that much, cooler or more, more enticing to people. And somewhere in the middle is probably a universe where we have better things to sell and better selling of them. Well,
I don't know. We'd be following Google I/O, which is happening this week. Are you going to be following that? I think Google could do actually a better job of serving up advertising. So that's a whole nother show.
Very much so. No, I will be following soccer this week.
Oh, that's right. Are your teams winning?
My team plays again Thursday. The United States had a gut-wrenching last-minute, near victory snatched from the jaws of certain victory. And Thursday we get a shot to beat Germany and advance into the round of 16, which would be exciting for soccer fans and, of course, great for the world at large, because anytime the United States succeeds at soccer, everyone in the world benefits.
I know. It's on the, it's funny. It's, on Twitter, it's everything, and Facebook. And so we'll have to see how that plays out. But I know you're excited about it and the world is excited. And I appreciate you coming on the show. As you and I talked about, this is before the show, I was realizing this is an anniversary for me of about 2 years ago. There was a wildfire in Colorado, and I lost my home in that fire. And I was kind of struggling with that this morning, and I want to thank you for helping me out with that. But it was all about, and it was funny because you and I were talking how social media is so important, and that was I found out about the fire on social media. I connected with people afterwards, and that was really a family, if you will, for me to survive. And you and I were talking about that, and you thought I should share that. And I think that's a good point, and how social media is really a part of building relationships, whether it's brands, businesses, public relation, media. It worked out for me, and I think you made a good point.
Well, yeah, and I just want to stress that I think it is impossible for someone like me on the outside who wasn't in an experience like that to truly understand, how difficult that can be to go through, to lose your home, to be in the path of a fire. But I think also that is exactly kind of the thing that we need to figure out with social still, which is that we do have these real human connections, and we do have these connections on social which often pass as being human. But when these events occur and that support does galvanize itself around, someone like you who is in the middle of that, we know that it has great potential to do truly amazing things, and not just entertain us or not just help sell products and so on. So, there's not just something very important and personally powerful, but there's probably a lot that all of us on the outside can learn, from those types of experience. And that's what I would like to see. If you look ahead a year at Cannes, I'd like to see us, be that much smarter as an industry about how to make social truly relevant and truly impactful on people's lives, and not just, good for marketing.
I would agree. We should do a whole show on that, right? In fact, we talked about that this morning in our conversation. So we'll do that, and we'll continue with that. Thanks, Brian, for taking time out of your day and joining us to talk all about the intersection of marketing and technology and covering the big event, whether the debate will continue, Con versus Can.
There's no debate, but I appreciate you trying to gin up ratings by saying that I was not correct there. But no, it's Cannes, and there's my wife actually sent a link. I sent it to you on the back end, but Fox News definitively proved that it was Cannes. So I'm on the forces of good here side. Yeah, but thank you for that.
And if somebody wants to follow you, what's the best way they can do that?
Might as well start on Twitter. My name at BrianReich, but you can Google me, and if I'm lucky enough, I'll be back again on some future shows. So you can always come back and we can connect here.
We love having you, Brian. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
And that concludes another episode of Marketing Mavericks. I'm your host, Tonya Hall. You can follow us on Twitter by going to hashtag Marketing Mavericks. You can email me, whether it's show topics, questions, whatever, at mavericks@twit.tv, or follow me personally because I will connect with you on Facebook at Tonya Hall or Google+, or guess what? You can also follow me on Twitter at Tonya Hall Radio. Nope, still working on dropping the radio, but soon will happen. Everybody, until then. Oh, and by the way, our next episode is going to be Monday night, June 30th. We are changing our time, so no more early mornings. It'll be evening talk about social media marketing and technology. We'll talk to you then.